Chief Architect Forum presentations, CITA-D presenters. We would love for you to become a presenter or an author in the Metis platform. So if you've been writing short blurbs for LinkedIn and are tired of the blah, definitely come check us out at Metis, because it's a great place to start building out your awareness of you as an architect. That brings me to the Bitterbock itself. The Bitterbock is a free open source body of knowledge. This is the anti-framework. It is tested, tried and true techniques presented by architects, peer reviewed by architects over the last 10 to 20 years. It is a spectacular space. We are building out a body of knowledge that has decision record techniques. It has patterns and viewpoint techniques. It's got road mapping tools. It's got kind of everything you need to run a solid architecture practice or to be an architect. We'll be doing some special learning presentations on the Bitterbock. But remember, if there's one thing that distinguishes it, it is that the Bitterbock is practitioner built, meaning you too can be a author, right? So this is not a framework built by some big company somewhere. This is just us, architects, building a framework for architects, building a set of techniques for architects. What's cool, the secondary component of the Bitterbock is effectively that you can adopt it without adopting it. We don't care if you adopt it all the way across your enterprise. You don't have to have executive sponsorship to get value out of it. You don't have to pay anything. There's no vendors involved. And the wonderful news is if you want to start small, that's kind of what it's built for. So whether you just choose to download a decision record, or you choose to review the pattern library, or you choose to use the customer journey templates that we have and many of the other tools, that's exactly what we're after. The ISA membership is coming up strong. We have 4 membership levels, 5 if you include organizational memberships, but 4 membership levels free. We have always maintained a free membership at ISA. I said 25 years ago I would never charge for something that I didn't get value out of. And it took me 10 years before we charged anything. And now, though, we have training available. We've got journal articles. We've got all sorts of downloads. And for you, for the Explorer member, it's $9 a month. It's, less than a couple of cups of coffee. I guess 3 cups of coffee, depending on how good a cup of coffee every month, but it gets you access to the entire library. We also have full memberships and premium memberships which come with additional levels of learning, training, discounts, and much, much more. So come check that out. So my friend, Peter, how are you doing, sir?
Very fine. Thanks for having me.
Oh man, thank you for doing this for us. I'm so excited. And I love this topic because, I've known Simon since he invented SARM. I was actually one of the first guys that he presented it to, and I've always wanted to see more groups use it. So seeing a chief architect like yourself, for those of you who don't know, Peter Vonk is a chief architect. He's a member of the Chief Architect Forum. He is a chapter leader in the Netherlands chapter of ISA. He is a chief architect of many companies these days, and he's also in teaching our ISA core class. So he's also an ISA instructor. And believe it or not, 3 years ago, Peter, we barely knew each other. Like this is
that's right. That's right. So I'm quickly adopting the ISA and BTA book in my work. Yeah. True.
Well, so I'm going to turn this over to you now. This I think will probably be we found out how to do this, but I think this will be the least smooth transition here because I couldn't see your file to replace.
The presentation source has been added and is waiting in the lobby for the host.
Yeah, do you see see waiting in the lobby? That's the problem. Is I just don't know.
But I can also share my screen directly.
Here it is. Yes, no, I see it. Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Wow, that actually went really smoothly. All right, so I'm going to shut down this one. Yeah. I really do like this tool, Peter. Now, I'm going to let you present.
Yes.
So I'm going to sign off and go on mute, and then I'll be back to chat about architectural assessment.
All right. So thank you very much. So thanks everybody for saving some of your time and listening in. So I'm happy to be able to share some of my experience in applying SARM as an architecture assessment. There are many ways of applying SARM. We applied it as a tool to drive decisions in strategic tactic decision making, primarily on buying new, bigger platforms. And the subtitle of the presentation is that it's deliverable that proves early collaboration, and I will explain why. What indeed is good to tell is that I've been doing architecture for approximately 20 years, but I haven't been aware of methodologies like SARM, N8M, and PBAM before I got acquainted with the ISA knowledge and the BTA book. But I think it's very valuable in terms of improving our architecture practices. So now the question is, here we go. Yes. So the agenda is, so my drawing took about 30 to 35 minutes. So let's see to keep it to that as well. So I've made a short agenda. First, some comments on the architecture assessment as a definition and what were goals and benefits. And then about the applied methodology, which is solution architecture review method. What we did to make it fit to our context. How do you apply it in the real world? And then I have some anonymized examples of applying the SARM in the real world, and eventually some comments on the outcomes. So quickly about myself. So I'm really passionate about architecture and improving architecture, and I love being also part of ISA, which helps me and the profession to improve and professionalize. I have been able to achieve a master's degree in enterprise architecture, so I'm also quite familiar with the university and I will, let's say, the formal ways of approaching architecture. I've experienced in several branches on markets, retail, logistics, manufacturing, professional service. In the last years, I've been working in the financial services market. I have a special interest in what I call mid-market companies or environments. So those are large corporations, but a lot smaller than the real large corporates. And I love, besides doing architecture in terms of the content and creating this myself, also work with teams and companies to embed architecture as a way of working within transformation and IT change. I also am quite familiar with change management. I'm certified, and I view architecture also as a discipline that is really important in facilitating change, also from a people and cultural perspective. As Paul said, I'm an ISA Netherlands board member, and I will be also giving some trainings in ISA Core in the Netherlands. We have a physical course after the summer and an online course after the winter. All right, so we made a definition. So this is not I would say, a formalized definition for any type of assessment, but how we, I mean the assignments I had and the teams I work with, we created the following definition. So the assessment is a structured methodology, meaning repeatable and understandable, to evaluate solution scenarios against the validated architecturally significant requirements. So we also named it scenario analysis, and we did not name it architecture assessment. And the goal was to obviously improve the quality of strategic tactical decision making. And the aim was also to generate stakeholder support and collaborate on these decisions. And we told them, and also obviously architecture team, that there are definitely benefits to it. Having a structured, repeatable way reduces risk of unforeseen aspects. It helps you make better decisions and therefore prevent debt, so things that get outdated early or don't fit to your landscape. It improves implementation quality because you take a lot of important aspects that are important for you as a company in terms of fit to your culture, strategy, etc. Put it into your decision making, and therefore you contribute already in the decision making to your implementation quality. And all those things add up as business value. And in the end, the biggest lesson, I will get back to that later, is that the assessment itself, the end thing, I would say, is actually the conclusion that you reach together. So the conversation and the collaboration is where the real benefit is in the way we applied the SARM. All right. So then the SARM. So SARM is an open source, freely available, online available methodology. So you can look at the site and you can see instructions on how to use it, how to download it, etc. So it's not related to any corporation or any licensing or whatever. It's free to use. That was for me the main reason to start with the SARM. And it's based on a risk-driven approach. So you see that risk matrix on the right. And it actually works relatively simple. So it confronts a weighted architecture significant requirement, which are on the vertical lines, with the likelihood of the solution or scenario fulfilling that requirement. So it's quite easy to understand. So if you have a requirement that has a weight of 5, you cannot have any uncertainty, which is 1, because then you're almost certain it will fulfill. If it isn't totally certain, you see with a weight of 5, you directly onboard some risk in your decision. So this is how this works. So it's relatively simple, and that's, I think, also quite good, understandable for senior business stakeholders, how this works. And in the end, it rolls up to a weighted figure where the lower the figure is, the lesser the risk is. So it has some extension points that we didn't use directly, so you can differentiate between stakeholder needs. But what we did is we used it to actually harmonize and create a collaborated, shared view on our decisions and on our requirements. There's also possibility to extend the analysis with cost benefits analysis and business case. That's also next stage that we want to pursue if we get better in working with the deliverable. All right. So as with any methodology, framework, or way of working, I think it's very important that you make it fitting to your context. And we had a specific view on applying it for our large-scale portfolio work. And that's why we decided to not put any detailed requirement in it, but really use the concept of the ASR, the architecturally significant requirement. There's also a requirement, but that's one that has a material or significant impact on your system's architecture. And systems architecture here should also be considered in a broad sense. So it's not only the software architecture, but it's also about how the software or the system fits into your landscape, into your culture, into your integration patterns, etc. So the Excel template is English, obviously, so it's UK born. we are in the Netherlands, so we had to tailor it to make it to use it with Dutch quality attributes and sub attributes. We changed some things about and you need to also make a choice what type of characteristic. This is fully configurable. You see this also at the bottom, so the red lined insert is a screenshot of the configuration page of the Excel, where you have the availability option or the possibility to enter 10 main categories, and each of them can have up to 10 subcategories. We ended up with approximately 45. So one of these attributes is functionality. All the others are non-functionals. This is an important note. Let's get back to that later. So not only do you need to tailor the template, it's also important you develop a way of working. And what we did is we, as with other architecture deliverables, the idea is that you don't make a very detailed step-by-step instruction, because you are an expert and you need freedom, but you want to prevent that different architects go about it very differently. So you do want to have a common way of looking at it and describing the main steps. So that's what we did. And what we also did is creating a PowerPoint template to share the results. So the SARM template you use actually as a tool in the back. It's important that you have a good connection to senior stakeholder, whether it's in business boards or directors, or within your senior stakeholders from portfolio or other disciplines, because you need to explain that it is of the utmost value that you collaborate early in the process to together drive the best decision, because that will in the end turn out to be very valuable along the line. Obviously, you also need to discuss this with your team of architects, but that will be part of the development of the way of working. And then once you have a first template ready, your way of working ready, you put the deliverable, which we call scenario analysis, in deliverables catalog, and you're ready to start using it. So then you can apply the assessment, and here are some rough steps how you can do it. So it's not exactly the same in every case, but what is important is to assess whether this deliverable is fitting for the initiative, project, or program at hand. So if it's still quite vague and you are in more need of defining a strategy or a vision, then this is not a suitable deliverable or suitable tool. You need a quite clear scope, and you also need described solution opportunities, whether they are internally from out of your own stack, whether they are from the market, but you need to have a proper site on the possible solutions and the scope. And then the real work, I would say, starts. So you assess whether it's fitting, and you can apply it. And then the first step is, and I think this was also in the invite, to generate away your requirements. And this is not an easy thing. So the notion of a significant requirement needs good definition, it needs training, it needs exercise, and it needs collaboration. Depending on how early you are in the process, so in some cases there were already like detailed requirements lists, so we use them to evaluate them and actually roll them up into significant architectural requirements. And in other cases, we organized workshops to add to this parts that were not yet quite covered. And typically, Those are more in the non-functional space, and especially in the link to your strategy and your culture. It's important to organize workshop with your stakeholders and your IT specialists to together decide what is in this context the most important thing. And it's also important that not everything can be every important. So, for example, if you have a list of like 50 significant requirements, if you all make them enormously important, then obviously you won't have a lot of differentiation in your analysis, because if everything important, then you don't get a lot of differentiation. So we developed like rules of thumb that you only want to have, for example, 10 enormous, important, significant requirements, and you have a debate on, okay, if we have 10, then we need to be really clear on what in this content is the most important, or this context, the most important ones. And it's depicted here as a single step, but this takes time. So I think a majority of the work is in this part. And then you have the evaluation of the solutions or the scenarios. And we learned that it also is important to, per context, be very clear about the way of working. So I explained that you could differentiate to different stakeholders, but what we actually chose is to develop a way of working to harmonize our outcome to a shared and collaborative supported decision. And what we did is we typically selected several closely related stakeholders to first do the evaluation of the likelihood of the requirements to be fulfilled by the scenario on their own. And this works quite fine because it gives you a very good input to detect how people look at both the solution and the requirement. And if there is already consensus, meaning they score the same, you have already achieved consensus on that one. But typically there are definitely some requirements that people score differently. So then if you have done that, and the idea is to really document that way of working, in one case we used a demo-based approach. So we used use cases where all the requirements were woven into, and based on the presentations, each stakeholder scored the requirements. In other cases, we did that via a documented approach in an RFP process where the significant requirements were part of the RFP. So you then work out the differences. And I think this is a very important step to achieve consensus and build towards a shared decision that in the end will roll up to the harmonized trade-off, the total risk figure. Once you have achieved this step, most of the work is done. So you then go back to the template where you fill in this harmonized view, and then you have your weighted figure to present and publish in your deliverable. So those are some screenshots out of the Excel. So on the left, you see the architecturally significant requirements. And in the fourth column, impact, you see the weight of the requirements. So you see they have different weights. And then the screenshot on the right is the other side of the risk matrix, where the requirements are evaluated against the likelihood of the scenarios to fulfill that requirement. So, and if you, and obviously this is the end result of a lot of work. So there are workshops done, presentations done. There are PowerPoints and cards with descriptions of all these requirements, and via the working out of the difference, you get to a harmonized view on the likelihood of the scenarios fulfilling the requirement. So then that eventually rolls up to a condensed risk figure, which you can see in the overall line at the bottom. So as I said, this is an anonymized a view, but for the presentation, that's totally fine, because the message is very simple. The lower the figure, the lower the risk of achieving of fulfilling your requirements with this scenario. And we did that on several big portfolio initiatives. And the coloring is also quite fine, because it really is intuitive that green is good, amber is the risk, and red is a bigger risk. So again, think back on the risk matrix. So it becomes very easy for stakeholders and people to use this visualization and understand the methodology. So this is an example of how we presented the end result to our stakeholders. And as I said, the lower the risk, the better. But this is not then a data-backed, collaboration-backed, stakeholder-involved recommendation, instead of somebody doing in a more individual or silo approach his research. And we got really good feedback from different stakeholders on this way of working. So it helped a lot in explaining or getting also the podium to explain the importance of non-functional requirements. And what we found is that, especially in purchasing platforms, the non-functionals, so not the way the application works, because if you look at mature solutions, they all can typically do your work, but they tend to be quite different in the way the software integrates the openness of the data model, the way it fits to your AI strategy, the way it fits to your integration patterns and your tools for integration, and also the approach and the culture of the implementation partner turned out to be really a differentiator. So my last slide, my second to last slide, is about learnings, benefits, and conditions. So learnings. So develop an ASR mindset is not easy, yet very valuable. So I think that is really an important takeaway. As I said, the cases where we use this, the differentiating factors were typically all non-functional. So I think this is a very important lesson, also looking at a lot of RFPs that have lots and lots of detailed functional requirements. They turn out in this I would say time not to be decisive in the way it is applicable for your context, and doesn't help you in minimizing the risk of failure. And this approach definitely does. What we also did, what helped a lot, was after we finished the first one, we got the opportunity to present at a quarterly event as a achieved success, the learnings and the way of this way of working in a methodology. and this creates visibility. This creates secureness with a lot of stakeholders that are not directly involved, but are then aware of this way of working and the value it provides. And I like to add that I think modern architecture is really focused on creating a vision, then making a decision, and only then do a design. And well, at least for my practice, in the earlier days, we focused a lot on design and much less on decisions and on vision. And what I learned and what I also find in this methodology is that it's extremely valuable to collaborate in an early stage to develop vision, then make a decision, and only then make a design where you know you are going to support validated and supported decisions. This resonated very well with business stakeholders. So we got very positive statements and feedbacks that they were really happy with the attention and the explanation they got, how important it is to look at a broad spectrum of requirements to also make them aware of the importance of looking in this broad sense, and therefore helping them actually to understand the importance of this broad approach. That's also actually the second bullet. I think the benefit of this way of working is that it modernizes decision making and speeding it up eventually. So I'm not saying it already went very fast, but it takes time to get accompanied to the thinking, the collaboration. But as you adopt this as a way of working and a methodology, my vision is that you are able to improve your decision-making machine each time you run it. And the more people get acquainted, the more people know how it works, the faster is this will help your, I would say, decision power. And if you look back at the really big old-fashioned RFP processes, I would say they gave a lot of what's the right wording here? They seem to give a lot of certainty, but they typically lack a lot of. They miss a lot of important things that provide you a real certainty. So repeatable structured process for decision making, obviously. Then last point, it does require some conditions. So if your architecture is considered as a ticking the box late in the process operational discipline, obviously this is not going to fly. People won't understand why you collaborate with senior stakeholders on this way of working. So what's required is a spot at the table, and typically that requires a architecture vision and a governance and operating model that is able to clearly explain the value of modern architecture to business leaders. So they must know and understand the value and importance of business technology architecture. So in the cases where I was able to apply this methodology, we definitely put a lot of effort to collaborate with board and senior and directors to explain in their language why this is important. So there are definitely some conditions to make this effective. All right, so this one was my presentation. So I have some questions for the attendees to think about, I don't know, the coming days, some food for thought. So my question would be to you, could an early assessment have changed a recent decision in your organization? And if the answer is yes, I would encourage you to investigate this way of working. Another question would be, do you have an understanding of how well your senior business stakeholders understand ASRs? And I would say especially non-functionals. Functionals people typically understand. And then my last question, actually, what would be stopping you from trying an assessment on your next initiative, program, project, or whatever? So, well, thanks for listening and participating. And then over to you, Paul.
Well, as you might know, I like surprises. So I've invited the inventor of SARM to come chat with us
Cool.
about architecture analysis. Hi, Simon.
Hello, good to meet you again.
Yeah, it's been
Thank you, Peter.
Nice to meet you, Simon. Really cool to have you here.
So how's it feel, Simon, to have your method out there being used day in and day out?
Well, it's lovely. It's lovely to see hear some feedback. One of the interesting things was quite a long time ago. My old friend, your old friend, actually, Gar Macriosta, was the one who persuaded me that we should just put it out on a Creative Commons license and with a spreadsheet on an open source license and let it go, as it were. One of the disadvantages of that is that if you haven't got the resources to create a community, which I don't have individually, is that you kind of don't really get to see what happens. I can see lots of people downloading it, and it's kind of free to fly. So it's lovely to actually hear some feedback. And I think, Peter, you put your finger on a lot of the key things. And a lot of them actually aren't really about the detail of the method.
Exactly.
It's about creating a common language and getting people around the table to understand different perspectives.
Exactly.
And the mechanics is almost the vehicle which allows you to do that.
Exactly.
And the other thing I think you also highlighted, and I'd very much emphasize actually, is be careful. You said, I think early on, you used actually a PowerPoint presentation to present the output and the results.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't hide behind a spreadsheet.
No.
You know, you should not say.
No,
you mustn't say we chose
this
this because the number was this.
Yeah. I fully agree. So the spreadsheet is the tool for a specialist in the back. I would say that's the best way of expressing it, and the rest of it is having conversations on the value of this way of working, present the methodology, show small process of what are we going to do, how we're going to collaborate, and what will it provide you as a main stakeholder in terms of insight, certainty, and value. And this works really well from my experience. Yeah.
You know, and guys, I get this question. So obviously, you know, and we'll have we'll have our friends from SEI, some of the inventors of ATAM on to talk a little bit about this, as well as, you know, I'd like to invite the inventor of PBAM, which is a perspectives-based architectural analysis, Lewis Curtis, to actually talk about. So each of these seems to be actually a different flavor, right? A lot of people say, well, should I use this one or that one? And I say, well, and I don't know what your thoughts are, because it really feels like they accomplish different architectural purposes as techniques. And I don't know if that makes sense to you. I saw you nodding, Simon.
Yes, I think you're right. In fact, SARM did sort of grow out of ATAM, probably a long time ago now, might be over 20 years ago. I started using ATAM on recommendation of a consultancy organization that we were working with in technical architecture, but we wanted to have business colleagues around the table. And they, I'm afraid, got really quite confused. And they found the rather abstract concept of utility and utility trees really difficult to grasp. And we came back after about 3 days of angst, and I felt I'd made a real mess of things, and rethought it. And it was after that we had the aha moment that said, actually, risk. is a language that most business professionals understand quite well. It splits into likelihood and impact. And if you like, if you invert risk to a certain extent, you've got utility, but you're talking a language of risk which is more understandable. That was probably the biggest change we made. Maybe the other one was that actually even working with those consultants, every project they did for us, they introduced their own invented quality model for each project. And they were introducing a completely alien language to everybody. And it was, as I was doing some academic research, I saw that there are some international standards. 9126, I think, was the original one. It's now ISO 25010. Unfortunately, it's copyright, so you have to purchase the rights to use it. But at least it gives you that common language. And again, back to Peter's points about the learnings. What we found when we used SARM repeatedly with one standard, our business colleagues started to talk about all the different quality characteristics. In other words, they actually started talking the language of non-functional requirements and understanding their significance, because there was always the same language: maintainability, security, reliability, and so on. And they began to appreciate the value of that, which was a really big plus about functionality.
Yes, and I could add to that I think the more you get acquainted to it, and the more you go through different iterations of this process, you will build your, I think, company specific quality attribute set that will also be more and more recognizable, which is fitting to your business model, your culture, and your application landscape. So I'm really confident that the first iterations are relatively hard, because you need to, I would say, fit it together, explain it. But the more you get a hang of it, the more it will be a repeatable quality, and you only have to then focus on the specific differences of a context.
So guys, I wonder though, because we're putting together the quality attribute hierarchy in the Bitterbuck, which is of course free and open source, right? I find this to be like the word scope. So like scope to be, and again, I want to come back again to the different purposes of the techniques and analysis, because I find ATAM SARM seems to be very strong at requirements analysis. ATAM seems to be very strong at quality attribute analysis from an engineering perspective. Like I hear a lot of Amazon architects go, yeah, we use it if we need it. It's going to blow up if we don't do it. I've had that in oil and gas. I see a lot more of usage of that in the science intensive spaces, right? The PBAM work that we did was very much a soft, lightweight thing. But there's a kind of a, like you said, a juxtaposition here of quality attributes and what quality attributes we use. Now, I wonder if you're finding what I hear most common in this space, and that is, not just the confusion, that was obvious, but the real lack of quality attribute management across architectural practices, right? In the sense of, the big four are fine: resiliency, performance, usability, and security. No problem. Yeah, everybody has to have some metrics there. I'm a little worried though that disappears. This architectural analysis stuff disappears on smaller scopes, right? That the scope and the understanding of it at a practice level is quite confusing. Now, I'm wondering if you see the same thing, the confusion around scopes of application, right? We only do this for big stuff. And B, that a custom quality attribute analysis techniques is just not going to fly in the long run, because each org is like, we don't really care about testability, Where do you think we should fall on that? Do we as a profession need to stand up and kind of say, no, the patient, if the patient is showing signs of this, you test for this. What do we need to do? We need to be more or less flexible. What do you see as the big challenges to getting that understood, even in the IT department?
You go first, Peter.
Well, I would say I think we shouldn't strive for one big model to solve all scopes and all questions, first of all. So I think so we chose this scope of portfolio-based big decisions. I think it's also very valuable to choose I don't know, implementation review quality assessment, which is later on in the process has I don't know, smaller scope or focuses on, I don't know, local development. So I think you should be very clear on in what context and scope you are applying this to prevent your problem.
I think my preference is actually to have a standard model at least in the large organizations I've worked in. I think there can be a danger of saying, well, we've listed out the things we think are important, so we'll only design the thing around those. And I'd be much more comfortable if you have it's like a 360-degree view. And even if you're forced to go through the motions and say, actually, I've looked at that and it's not important for this one, I'm giving it a low importance, but I've considered it. There's something a bit auditable about this. And you've talked before, I think, Paul, about accountability and the importance as a profession of us being accountable. I'd rather that somebody has said, I've considered all of these. I mean, goodness me, these are not huge models. They're not hugely complicated models. So if someone spent a bit of time looking through a standardized list that at least is that 360-degree, albeit configured specifically for the type of organization of saying, yes, I consider that these things are important, these things are not important, and I'm prepared to sign that off before we move forwards. I think that's kind of quite important, rather than just assuming that you happen to remember the right things at the right time, because something might come back and bite you. So I think actually considering everything in the round, it's not a lot of time overall compared with the length of the project or the risk when something goes wrong.
And see, this is what I wonder. Go ahead, Peter.
So I have one comment to make on that, and my goal was to explain it in the presentation, but I forgot. So we actually decided to only put in architectural significant requirements that would be a differentiator in the scenario. So, for example, we expect all our solutions to be secure. So then you can put in security, but if one of them will only have a small risk, they are not applicable for a scenario. In other words, they are a non-differentiator because they are a knockout. So we explicitly splitted those to apply the analysis to find the differentiating factors, meaning you have also some very important non-differentiating factors that you still need to make sure in implementation and in your RFP process to make sure they are covered. And you could do, could do something different in implementation to check those, for example.
So I think this is a great, it's interesting because I often hear the translation in people's heads as we have to implement this in a process for IT, as opposed to what I think often we mean is architects, if they're titled architects, should have a rigorous history of understanding, having been trained in the quality attributes, quality models, know how to differentiate the scenarios in which they're usable and understand which viewpoints might allow a design approach, which requirements might impact those, to be able to provide solid evidence to governance or business users or executives for why that particular architectural approach would be needed in that specific environment, right? So again, Primark has a very different set of quality attribute needs than a missile defense system, or a satellite system. So it's not one size fits all. But at the same time, I feel like the consistency I hear from architects is very low in the sense of what they themselves know how to deal with. And I'm wondering, what if I apply SARM, if I just want to pick it up, and try it out. And I'm a solution architect. I'm just a regular old architect, right? I don't have mission critical control. How do you guys recommend that we do that? How do we, take, okay, fine, a sizable project, but maybe it's not the, $100 million project, you know what I mean? Like not full portfolio scope investment and executive visibility. Is there ways that I can apply SARM in these more, kind of wham, bam, we're going, kind of things?
Yeah, I've done it beginning to end in a couple of hours for a small decision that was actually just within the architecture team. So it wasn't a big procurement. I've done it for a huge procurement as well, with lots of business people around the table. But I've done it with a couple of architects around the table who just wanted to make sure that they were taking that 360-degree view. They had a couple of options and they wanted to kick the tires, as it were. They really just wanted to see where the strengths and weaknesses were, perhaps just to confirm what they suspected. I think there's a danger, and perhaps that's the problem of looks like a big spreadsheet. You've got to have, 100 requirements and you've got to spend many hours evaluating everything. You don't necessarily. And sort of back to Peter's point, if you can narrow it down and you just want it to help you over a decision, then it might well be a subset of that model that are the differentiators, and you just want to just get it's almost like having, it's not exactly a second opinion, but it's like having a slightly more objective way of looking at it than perhaps you think you might if you just say, I'm going to go for it with my gut feel. Exactly. And that can be done very quickly in an hour or two.
Peter?
Yeah, so a defensible data-backed recommendation instead of a gut call, and I think that's it. And it can be done in a large setting, but you can also very quickly with a set of architects make a decision on what type of low codes you have in-house. So you have AI, you have Power Platform, you have a low-code platform, you have a specific problem you need to solve internally. You can, I think, in some hours run an analysis together to have a data-backed decision. Typically fine.
So I wanted to thank you guys. We're right here at the end of the hour. Peter, thank you for the amazing presentation. And, Simon, thank you for joining. I would like to challenge everybody who joins to come find the architecture analysis article. I actually believe it's time for an update on that, because listing out some of these things that we heard today aren't quite there. But Simon was the original author of that article in the Bitterbock. And I think an architectural analysis technique, especially as we enter an age where AI is just building things, right? And we can kind of point it in whatever direction and go build that and even maybe one-shot it in some cases. So we need to be better and better and better at pre-analysis instead of trying to catch everything at the end. So I want to, really ask our audience to submit opportunities and thoughts about architectural analysis in our communities, where we have chat groups, in the architectural analysis article, as well as you will find the download of Peter's very practical presentation. Immediately, it'll be about 30 minutes that it will be available in Metis for download for Explorer members and above. So, and Simon, maybe we can get you and Peter and a couple of the other guys, and we can get a roundtable together on the future of architectural analysis. I'd love to introduce you to Lewis Curtis, who was the inventor of PBAM, which is another one that has some use and some quality aspects to it for her. Thank you guys so much.
Thanks for having me. It was a pleasure to be around, and good to meet you, Simon.
Yeah, thank you. Likewise. Thanks, Paul.
Bye-bye, guys.
And everybody pay attention. August 12th, you will get your Arc for Dev live session. There, as usual, will be a surprise guest for Annalie. And thank you again, guys. We will see you next time.
All right. Thank you.